Hello and welcome back to the show. And today's episode number 643. And I'm really excited to have my new friend Sailaja Joshi here. Sailaja is the CEO of Mango and Marigold Press, an award-winning publishing house of multicultural stories and the only Asian-owned indie press in the country. She's also the co-founder of 1001 Diverse Books, a new nonprofit that she started only a few months ago in November 2021. Welcome, Sailaja. It's great to have you here on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I am thrilled to be here. And what an intro. I love hearing that stuff.
I loved saying it. So tell me a little bit more about your publishing company and why you were inspired to create it.
Yeah, so Mango and Marigold Press started in 2014, and it started under the name Bar with Babies. And it really started out of my own journey in motherhood. A year before 2013, I was pregnant with my first child, and I was having this library themed baby shower, as of course you do in the age of Pinterest, and I'm a huge bibliophile. I love books. I'm an academic. My husband's an academic. So this library themed baby shower was totally on brand. And I was putting these books on my registry, and I started studied critical race theory, education, all these places. And I knew it was just really important for my children to see themselves from the beginning. As a first generation immigrant, I really wanted to hold on to my culture, and books were a natural place in which to do that. I think so many of us turn to books for those types of things. And I couldn't find things. I remember scrolling through Amazon and I was like, how is it that like India, a country with billions of people, thousands of stories that are well known, doesn't have even like a little bit of representation there? And there were some books there, but the books that I found were developmentally inappropriate, culturally inaccurate, culturally insensitive. And it was just so frustrating to think to myself that my child wasn't going to see themselves on the cover of a book. Like they would never see that. So it took about a year, took having my first child, my oldest, a career change. I left my PhD program and $1,000 of startup capital, and I started our publishing house. And the vision and mission has always been to sort of share the stories that would typically go untold. In 2013, there were 5 times as many books about dogs and trucks than there were about all children of color. And that stat hasn't changed that much over the course of the past, 9 years. And I'm really here to ensure that like every child can see themselves and feel like they're the hero of the story.
That's such a wonderful, wonderful mission. I absolutely love it. And I think it is so important for kids to be able to see themselves, people who look like them, whatever they look like, in stories and on covers of books, because it allows, I think all children are born with limitless imagination.
Exactly.
The ability to imagine themselves. They're not limited by what society, I think, tries to put on adults, which is, oh, who do you think you are to think you can do that? Or you think you're so great. This humility is a weaponized term, I think.
Yeah.
And so I think adults are socialized to not be too big, not shine too bright. And of course, there are plenty of us who try to fight against that. But children do not have any of those limitations. They can imagine themselves as the leader of a circus, or the president of their country, or some famous actor, or a poet, or a superstar of some kind. Nothing limits them. And so I think it's really great that that your mission is to allow children of all colors, shapes, and sizes to be able to see what's possible for them.
Exactly. And I think too, it's not just about children seeing themselves, but other children seeing other reflections of reality. Like, think about that stat that I just said. That means like children who are maybe a dominant, like white children,
Hmm.
we're seeing more depictions of dogs and trucks than they were of seeing their like black neighbor in
Hmm.
their children's books growing up. I know like it was certainly the case for me, and I grew up with like every kind of book possible.
Hmm.
And it's so important for like all children to have a wide variety of books on the bookshelf that are being read to them so they can explore and see the world in a really safe, comfortable, and familiar way.
Mm, I totally agree. I just had a side question when you were talking
Yeah.
about that statistic. So I'm thinking about books that are here in the US that I
Hmm.
remember reading growing up. And then
Hmm.
they're like classics, they were still on the bookshelf when my kids were born.
Hmm.
So are there, I mean, there have to be, right? Classics. Let's just speak of India for one.
Hmm.
Are there classic books that generations of kids were exposed to in India growing up?
So I think that's a really interesting question, and you'll see with maybe African communities and Asian communities, a lot of those different countries, and this is speaking incredibly broadly. So
Mhm.
every community and country has this nuance. There was this strong culture of oral storytelling, as well as multi-generational family living. And so
Yes.
the key thing I found when I started my press is that I was going to be the first generation who didn't have that experience. Like I'm very blessed that I live 45 minutes away from my parents and where I grew up. But my parents, they aren't here daily reading my kids stories or
Hmm.
here at snack time and telling them stories, which was their experience when they lived in India. And it was very similar to my experience when I grew up here. Like my grandparents would come over for long periods of time and I would hear these stories and absorb these stories and have them. But that wasn't the reality here in the United States. And frankly, it's becoming less and less the reality in home countries like India. And so, yes, there are perennial stories and favorites and stuff that are rooted in a lot of our religions and communities and sort of stories and folklore about nation building and all of those things. But there's also, I think, the thing that our press looks to explore is the community experience of the South Asian diaspora. So, like when I talk to people about our country, I talk to us, say we celebrate the sweet and savory stories of the South Asian experience. And often people are like, that's really broad. And I'm like, yes, it is, because the South Asian experience is really broad. And who am I to dictate that? I want to see my authors and illustrators come to me and tell me what that experience is, and for us to be able to share it and reflect it in the world. And so it was a really interesting experience of building a publishing house and building our catalog to help to reflect those stories that are familiar and to create space for those stories that are new and have gone untold.
I love that. That's very, very cool. Are the majority of your, well, let me say this, where do the majority of your already published authors live? Like what countries do they come from?
Oh, I would say they're all based here in the United States, actually. One in
Oh, okay.
Canada, so North America. I would say for the most part, my mission and vision really resonated, I think, with frankly mothers like me, or about interested in becoming mothers, young activists, authors. So many of them that my story resonated with them, and they're all here, and they're all again really similar to my background, where they grew up here in the United States and remembered going back to home to India, but they consider themselves just American just as much as being Indian.
Hmm. That's very cool. That's really neat too, because that shows that you and your authors share that common desire to expose children to
Yeah,
different cultures, different kids, their own people who look like them and people who don't look like them.
exactly. Exactly.
That's very, very cool. So tell me a little bit about your new nonprofit that is just getting off the ground.
Yeah. So the nonprofit started really as an idea, and it started as an idea in 2018, and it launched alongside Mango and Marigold Press at that time. It's called 1001 Diverse Books. And my mission was frankly to very early in the start of our publishing house, I saw quite clearly how needed these books were and how there was a lack of funding to get these books to the most deserving communities,
Mm.
whether it was teachers, educators, libraries. Often in book deserts, there wasn't a way to get it. And teachers would come to my booth and be like, I really want your book, but I don't have money. My school doesn't have money, so I'm just going to pay for it. And I was like, you barely are making money.
Bless
I
teachers.
cannot, I know. I was like, I feel horrible taking your money. I want to give you this book, but that's also not a great business model for me.
Right.
And so that's like bad business. And so I recognized that there was maybe this opportunity, and it's not quite a wasn't quite a one for one model. My mission and what I would do is at the release of every book where we had during our pre-order campaign, I would encourage my community to support others by sponsoring a book for $10. And in doing it, I was able to just sort of cover the base cost necessary for the book, to pay the author and illustrator their rightfully deserved royalties, all of that, keep the lights on. And I was able to give away a ton of books. And so in 2021, after talking with our author Sheetal Shep, she was a huge driver of this mission, as well as another partner, Anand Gandhi. The three of us came together and we were like, why don't we formalize this as a nonprofit? Because we don't want to just give away Mango and Marigold books. We want to do this for a variety of books, for books that represent different communities of color, different abilities, underserved, like have underrepresented characters in it, are written by underrepresented authors. And so that's what happened. So we launched as a full-fledged nonprofit in 2021. And in December, we launched our first sort of campaign, which was called, it was a book flood in the Bronx. So the Bronx Book Flood. Our vision and mission was to help flood the Bronx and its adjoining areas, including Brooklyn, with books. Because even though Brooklyn has so much money, there's so many parts of Brooklyn that are considered book deserts. And a book desert is an area that where the community not only doesn't have access to books, so they might not have a library within within the area, but they also don't have access to a bookstore. So the only place where they can get books is maybe a school. And often libraries get cut from funding. And so we work alongside other literacy nonprofits to help distribute books into the community.
I love that. That is so great.
Yeah.
What a great
Thank you.
mission. That's beautiful. I also am a bookworm, and I love books. And it's almost like having a blanket, like a blankie.
Yes,
I like to have my book
absolutely
anywhere I go. And so
100%.
I think it's so important for little kids, young kids, to learn how awesome reading can be.
And to have a book of their own, to have a new book. I am very blessed. I grew up in a place that if I wanted a book and I couldn't get it at the library, my mom would find a way in our budget to buy that book for me. And that is just what happened. God bless my mom, because that meant something else from the budget went away to get me that piece of that, to get me that book. And it's a luxury. And I don't believe books should be a luxury, especially children's books, which are the cornerstone of literacy and community. I think they are a fundamental human right. And so I'm so just humbled and thrilled that we can make this nonprofit. We are doing hopefully one, maybe even two campaigns in the Bronx and Brooklyn area this spring, and hoping to expand to another city in the summer. Our vision and mission for 2022 is to raise enough funds to give away 2,055 books. I don't know why my founders and I just picked some weird numbers. I like it, and I think we can do it, especially with community's help. So it'll be wonderful.
That'll be really, really exciting. So where can people find out more about the books that you have published as
Yeah,
well as your nonprofit? But before you tell me that,
yeah,
I forgot to ask this. What
please.
age range are the books that you have already published? What kids are they for?
Yeah, what's so great is we're actually, I would say from birth onwards.
Hmm,
You know, we have a strong catalog of illustrated books, which I think is really good from anywhere from 2 years old all the way up to second, third grade. Like I see them used in curriculum all the way up to fifth and sixth grade. So I think, I hate putting those age ranges in there because I see them used in so many different ways. And then we also have middle grade books. We have young adult books. We have a middle grade fantasy book called Ray on the Blood of Nectar, which is just like everything. Like I was a big fantasy reader growing up, and that book is just like it tugs at my heart so hard because it's so great.
wonderful.
And so I think anyone can read it. Like I read our book, like I read Raya just on my own. And so I think there are books for adults. We have an really beautiful anti-racist book called Unbelonging, which is it's in poetry, and it really explores identity and belonging. It's being used in college classrooms, putting out some
Wow.
really important texts into the world that really connect with humans on multiple levels.
That is beautiful. I love it. I love your mission.
Oh, thank you. I like it
Uh,
too. I'm a big fan.
yeah, I think it's so important. So, where can people find out more about your books that you've published as well as your nonprofit if they want to support it?
Yes. So you can find our books at mangoandmarigold.com. You can also go to good old Amazon, type in mangoandmarigold.com, Mango and Marigold, or type in one of our titles and you can find it there. We now ship via directly through Amazon. That really helps our small press
Huge.
cut some of those big overhead costs. And then you can find our diverse, my nonprofit 1001 Diverse Books. You can find it at 1001, the numeral, so 1001 diversebooks.org. We are a new nonprofit. We are 501c3, so any donations you make there are tax deductible. And if you have a city you would like to sponsor, maybe in your area, that is what is hopefully happening in a soon to be named city. We found, a big spot, like a philanthropist who was like, I want to sponsor the city. I want to sponsor it in my hometown. And we were like, yes, we want to do it. We want to do that work. And so it's pretty cool. So yeah, please buy our books. Please donate to us. Any amount, I assure you, will help us on our mission.
That is so exciting. I hope all of my listeners after this interview will run over and check out both of your websites, check out your books, and support your wonderful mission to help
Thank you.
children become book lovers.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Well, thank you for this time, Sailaja. It was so much fun
Sailaja.
talking. Sailaja. See, I knew I was going to mess it up. Sailaja. It was so much fun talking to you and learning about your mission. And I think it's really wonderful. And it makes me smile
Thank
when
you,
I think
Erin.
about all the kiddos who are going to be reading and enjoying new books.
Yeah, thank you so much, Erin, for your time and energy. I really appreciated it. And thank you, listeners, for listening in and hearing more about the work we do.
Yes. So that wraps up today's episode. Wherever you are in this world, I hope you will make some time to read a book today.